A gale howled through the ruined chapel as candles snapped to life, and the stone door groaned open. Aidan Vale steadied his breath, clutching a tarnished locket. Master Rowan said, "Listen to the wind, it remembers." Finn Ashby muttered, "I heard a bell that no one rang." A hidden whisper rode the draught and brushed Aidan's ear. The voice said, "Wake what sleeps beneath, or watch the crown drown in ash." Elara Wynne stepped from shadow, cloak wet with mist. Elara said, "Guards circle the hill, led by Draven Blackthorn." Master Rowan traced sigils on cold marble and winced. Rowan said, "The vow here was broken at midnight long ago." A stone relief of a dragon blinked with dust-like tears. Finn said, "If this is fate, say it plain." The bell tolled once, and the floor answered with a hollow shiver. Aidan said, "If the last dragon is real, I will find it." The whisper turned sharp as a blade and faded, leaving the door yawning like a wound. Dawn crawled like a bruise over the moor as the chapel fell behind them. Master Rowan said, "The whisper marked a path older than the crown." Elara checked a hidden map sewn into her sleeve. Elara said, "The wards are thinning by the river." Finn kicked frost from his boots and tried to smile. Finn said, "If this is a rescue, who rescues us?" Aidan kept the locket warm in his palm and watched crows spiral. Rowan said, "Names bind, but true names break." A horn sounded from the ridge and died in the fog. Elara said, "Draven will hunt until the hill is ash." Aidan said, "Then we outrun his shadow." The moor answered with silence as a single black feather fell. They reached a river where ice clung to reeds like glass teeth. Master Rowan said, "Speak softly, the water keeps oaths." Elara knelt and pressed the map against a stone. Elara said, "The ford vanished with last winter." Finn eyed the current and swallowed a joke. Finn said, "Maybe the river dislikes shoes." Aidan felt the locket tug toward the far bank. Aidan said, "There's a bridge we cannot see." The wind paused as if listening. Rowan said, "Ask, and it answers in costs." A raven croaked from a willow and shook free frost. Elara said, "We pay together or not at all." The river flashed like an opening eye. Stones surfaced one by one, forming a pale path as the current bowed. Master Rowan said, "Tread where the old vow still breathes." Elara tested the first slab and held out her hand. Elara said, "Light feet, heavy courage." Finn laughed once to hide fear. Finn said, "I prefer dry heroics." Aidan stepped onto the living bridge as mist folded around his ankles. Aidan said, "If this was meant for us, it will hold." The willow leaned like a listener close to confession. Rowan said, "Do not speak the dragon's name here." A cold hush fell, and even the raven watched without sound. They reached the far bank as hoofbeats broke the fog like thunder. Elara said, "Riders from the ridge." Master Rowan drew a circle on the soil with his staff. Rowan said, "Stand within and breathe once." Finn pulled Aidan into the ring as lances flashed beyond reeds. Finn said, "I vote for vanishing quickly." Aidan lifted the locket and felt heat bloom under the metal. Aidan said, "Guide us to what sleeps." The air thickened with a scent of old rain and charcoal. The reeds bent as if bowing to a crown unseen. Elara said down the hollow, "Now." The ground opened to a hidden path, and the hoofbeats faltered like doubt. The hollow path wound into a valley, drowned in mist, and every breath hung heavy. Aidan Vale said, "The air itself feels watched." Finn Ashby kicked at pebbles and tried to whistle, but the sound broke in his throat. Master Rowan said, "The bell you heard binds the kingdom's blood to this trail." Elara Wynne unfolded her damp map again, her hand trembling, though her eyes were sharp. Elara said, "If the wards collapse, the capital will fall in days." The moor's silence broke as a horn echoed low from unseen ridges. Aidan said, "It follows us like a shadow refusing dawn." Finn glanced skyward where crows swirled against the grey morning. Finn said, if they toll that bell again I might scream first. Rowan paused, fingers pressed to stone, his voice a whisper. Rowan said, the bell tolls when the throne weakens. The valley darkened as though the fog itself grew teeth. By noon the group sheltered beneath a broken oak where roots clawed the earth. Finn Ashby said, do we march until our boots melt or rest until they rot? Master Rowan leaned against the bark, his staff across his knees, and studied Aiden Vale. Rowan said, your curse is not chains but mirrors, and each step cracks them further. Aiden's jaw tightened as he uncurled his hand to reveal the locket glowing faintly. Ilara Wynn said, every glow means the wards weaken more. Finn fidgeted with his boots, kicking dirt over roots. Finn said, if we wait long enough, Draven's men will dig us out. A raven croaked and startled them into silence. Rowan said, the loyal walk not because it is safe, but because turning back damns more than one crown. The oak groaned, old as the valley itself, as though it agreed. The air sharpened as the trail bent toward marshland. Ilara Wynn said, beyond this mire lies the old outpost. Aidenvale felt the locket pull harder, vibrating like a heart. Finn Ashby sniffed the reek of stagnant pools. Finn said, I'd rather fight knights than leeches. Master Rowan's gaze fixed on the horizon where collapsed towers rose like broken teeth. Rowan said, those stones once guarded dragons. Ilara said, now they guard silence. Aiden tested the mud with his boot, sinking ankle deep. Aiden said, every step forward feels like stepping into memory. Finn muttered a prayer and swatted gnats. Rowan said, memory bites deeper than any swamp creature. The towers loomed, half swallowed by reeds, as if they waited for the curse to stir them. They camped on dry stones where the marsh thinned, firelight trembling. A shadow stirred beyond the circle. Master Rowan said, do not trust the silence, it breathes lies. Aiden Vale gripped the locket, its glow flickering with the flames. Ilara Wynn whispered, something moves with the fog. Finn Ashby clutched a knife he barely knew how to wield. Finn said, if it's a ghost I'll faint first and fight later. A deep rumble shivered the air, though no beast appeared. Rowan said, the guardian watches, bound by old law. Aiden lifted his gaze, seeing faint silver eyes above the reeds. Aiden said, it does not strike. Ilara said, it warns. The eyes vanished as the fire snapped louder. At dawn horns blasted from the ridge, echoing across the marsh. Ilara Wynn said, Draven's reach grows faster than we walk. Master Rowan's cloak caught the wind like a banner of ash. Rowan said, he spreads shadow to choke hope before it blooms. Finn Ashby stumbled, panic quick in his breath. Finn said, if the horns catch us, we're meat for their lances. Aiden Vale stood firm, the locket blazing brighter than the sun's weak glow. Aiden said, then the dragon must wake before his crown is ash. Ilara fixed her gaze on the broken towers across the marsh. Ilara said, the path narrows. There is no return. The horns blared again, closer now, and the marsh answered with trembling ripples. The ruined outpost rose ahead like broken ribs against a pewter sky, and the wind carried the grit of old vows. Aidenvale said, we reach it before noon, or we do not reach it at all. Finn Ashby forced a grin that never reached his eyes. So, Finn said, I will settle for reaching it with all my toes. Master Rowan touched the tower stones and flinched as if burned. Rowan said, the wards here remember cruelty. Ilara Wynn scanned the ridgeline, her breath thin and measured. Ilara said, tracks, too light for horses, too many for deer. A distant clatter answered from Scree, quick and nervous. Rowan said, spies, soft-footed and hungry for favor. Aiden lifted the locket until it hummed like a hive. Aiden said, let them run behind us, our road is forward. Finn whispered a prayer that sounded like an apology. Ilara said, then we move, and we do not look back. The outpost waited like a mouth learning how to speak. A figure stepped from a collapsed arch, cloak soot dark, smile carved thin. Sir Malric Thorne said, "I kept watch for you, friends." Aidan Vale studied the man as if reading a riddle meant to cut. Aidan said, "Who paid for your watch, Malric?" Finn Ashby brightened at the sight of a familiar crest. Finn said, "He rode with the Northern Levy last winter." Master Rowan's voice sank like a stone. Rowan said, "And winter ended with strange mercies." Elara Wynn did not lower her blade. Elara said, "Speak the passphrase you were given." Malric's smile twitched. Malric said, "The bell bends." Aidan's fingers tightened on the locket. Aidan said, "The phrase is wrong by one word." Steel whispered free somewhere unseen. Rowan said, "Masks often forget their edges." The air thickened with the scent of rust and rain, not yet fallen. Malric's men sprang from shadow like teeth, but the floor answered first. The stones flared with lines that circled Aidan Vale and cracked outward. Master Rowan said, "Trial of the oath, old as the dragon's breath." Elara Wynn seized Aidan's wrist as the circle brightened to searing white. Elara said, "Stand with me, or stand alone and break." Finn Ashby stumbled but planted himself inside the ring. Finn said, "If I vomit, pretend it is a ritual." Malric Thorne laughed and kept his boots outside the light. Malric said, "Swear, and the gate opens, fail, and it swallows you." Aidan lifted the locket, voice steady despite the heat. Aidan said, "I swear to wake what sleeps and shield the crown from ash." The circle listened like a judge who had lost patience. Then the light folded into the earth and left the stones smoking. The light died, and steel began to speak. Malric Thorne said, "Payment is due," and motioned his archers forward. Aidan Vale charged before fear could argue. Aidan said, "Break their line, take the gate." Finn Ashby yelped and followed with more heart than grace. Finn said, "I am a legend of clumsy valor." Master Rowan traced a quick ward, and arrows bent like reeds in wind. Rowan said, "You will not have their hearts today." Elara Wynn slipped through gaps like rain through lattice. Elara said, "Drop the bow or drop your pride." One archer obeyed, another fell to his knee, and the gate groaned as chains unwound themselves. Malric hissed a curse that tasted of smoke. Malric said, "Draven will grind your names into dust." The sky answered with thunder that had not yet found its storm. They sealed the gate behind them, and the outpost exhaled a breath of dust. Aidan Vale swayed, vision rimmed in sparks. Aidan said, "The circle took more than it gave." Master Rowan steadied him, face drawn thin. Rowan said, "Your burden grows when a vow answers." Elara Wynn pressed her palm to his chest, feeling the locket's fever. Elara said, "Your pulse fights your ribs like a drum of war." Finn Ashby tried humor and failed twice. Finn said, "If he falls, I will carry him and complain later." From beyond the wall, Malric's whistle summoned riders with hungry hooves. Rowan said, "We must reach the inner stair before the horn calls steel to every door." Aidan breathed through the ache, gathering himself like a torn sail knotted to hold. Aidan said, "I can walk, and I will." The outpost's shadow stretched long, as if measuring the cost. The stair spiraled into darkness, each step dripping with the weight of centuries. Master Rowan's breath rasped like old parchment. Rowan said, "I once stood here as a boy, sworn to silence after breaking faith." Aidan Vale steadied him, eyes narrowing. Aidan said, "The vow you hid now binds us all." Elara Wynn brushed her hand along the wall, finding grooves shaped like claws. Elara said, "These marks are no accident." Finn Ashby trailed behind, whispering, "Every stone looks like it wants to chew me alive." Rowan pressed his palm to the grooves, sorrow shadowing his face. Rowan said, "The dragon's prison was carved by my order's hand." Aidan's voice was bitter. Aidan said, "Then the curse began with you." The stair groaned, dust raining, as if the walls themselves agreed. Elara's gaze softened. Elara said, "Secrets rot worse than wounds, but they still bleed truth. There plunged deeper, and silence grew heavier than steel. The stair emptied into a cavern vast as a cathedral, its roof lost in shadow. Pools mirrored broken statues of winged beasts. Elara Wynn whispered, "Guardians fell here before dawn existed." Finn Ashby nudged a cracked helm with his boot. Finn said, "They fell hard enough to still haunt me." Aidan Vale stepped to the center, where chains crossed the floor like veins of iron. Aidan said, "Something waits beneath." Master Rowan knelt, his staff trembling. Rowan said, "This cavern was a temple, then a tomb, then a lie." Elara's eyes tracked symbols carved into pillars, glowing faintly as if waking. Elara said, "Draven will use this place as crown and altar both." Finn shivered. Finn said, "If he does, what survives him?" Aidan lifted the locket, and the symbols flared brighter. Aidan said, "What survives him is what rises here." The cavern pulsed as though it had heard. They traced the carvings until a story emerged. Master Rowan said, "Draven was once sworn to guard the crown, betrayed by his own blood." Elara Wynn's eyes sharpened. Elara said, "Betrayal made him a tyrant." Aidan Vale frowned, voice heavy. Aidan said, "And now he hunts the dragon not to save, but to chain." Finn Ashby threw a stone at a pool, ripples distorting statues into twisted reflections. Finn said, "So his crown was built on broken mirrors." Rowan leaned into his staff, face ashen. Rowan said, "He was my pupil before he was your curse." Silence cut sharper than steel. Elara looked between them, suspicion flickering. Elara said, "Then your past feeds our enemy." Aidan's glare was cold as iron. Aidan said, "Every secret leaves us weaker." Rowan's shoulders bent. Rowan said, "Every secret leaves me haunted." The cavern dimmed, as though the truth itself smothered light. A shadow moved beyond the runes, cloaked in silver flame. Malric Thorn stepped forward, smirk cruel. Malric said, "Did you think I guided you for your glory?" Aidan Vale's hand flew to his blade. Aidan said, "You walked us here for chains, not freedom." Elara Wynn's blade gleamed sharp. Elara said, "Your lies end where these stones bleed." Finn Ashby stammered but planted his feet. Finn said, "If I fall, it will be loudly." Malric's voice cut like ice. Malric said, "Draven already wears the crown of ash, and you will kneel or choke." Rowan's voice broke, softer than bone. Rowan said, "I should have ended you when I had the chance." Malric drew his sword, runes glowing with false fire. Malric said, "Now it ends with me instead." The cavern roared as sparks rained from the ceiling, as if the world itself recoiled. Steel clashed, and betrayal sang its sharp hymn. Aidan Vale pressed against Malric's strike, sparks cascading. Aidan said, "You were never ally, only poison." Malric sneered. Malric said, "Poison kills quicker than faith." Elara Wynn struck from the side, her blade catching flame. Elara said, "Then bleed for your crown." Finn Ashby swung wildly, knocking a torch into the dust. Finn said, "I'll burn the world before I lose him." Rowan shouted words older than the cavern. Rowan said, "Break oath, break chain, break lie." The runes shattered in a cascade of light, rattling the cavern to its bones. Malric staggered, blade dimming. Malric said, "Draven will bury you with your hope." Aidan's strike drove him to the stone, and silence swallowed the roar. Rowan said, "Every lie ends, even mine." The cavern fell still, but the dragon's prison shuddered as though listening. The cavern settled after battle, but the air felt newly sharpened, as if the world had taken a breath it could not hold. Aidan Vale said, "If Malric served Draven, he was only a door." Master Rowan studied the shattered runes like a confession etched in light. Rowan said, "A door to a bloodline older than kings." Elara Wynn stepped close, her voice steady while her hands shook. Elara said, "The locket answers you, not the crown." Finn Ashby wiped grit from his face and tried a crooked smile. Finn said, If destiny is choosy, I hope it picked the one who bathes. The floor tremored, chains below chiming like distant metal rain. Rowan said, "The dragon sleeps beneath names, and yours is written in its first tongue." Aiden's breath faltered as heat rose from the locket like dawn. Aiden said, "If I am bound to it, then I must wake it clean." Elara touched his shoulder as if anchoring a storm. Elara said, "Then we cleanse what was broken." The tremor faded, but the choice remained like fire behind glass. They followed a vein of iron in the floor to a sealed arch where breath fogged in thin curls. Elara Wynn said, "Beyond this arch lies the vault of vows." Master Rowan knelt, pressing his staff to 3 hidden sockets. Rowan said, "Only living loyalty opens dead stone." Finn Ashby fumbled for courage and found it clumsy but real. Finn said, "Name me loyal, and I will foolishly prove it." Aiden Vale slid the locket into a notch, and the arch shivered like skin waking from cold. Aiden said, "If this binds me, then let it bind my better self." Iron veins glowed and receded as if drinking doubt. Elara said, "You do not carry this alone." Rowan's eyes softened with a grief that did not beg pardon. Rowan said, "I failed my pupil once. I will not fail my son in faith." The arch sighed, and blackness pulled back like a curtain to a stare of pale fire. Aiden said, "Whatever waits, we step together." The stair answered with a low, patient hum. The stair rose into a chamber of glass-black rock where a silver figure waited like moonlight made flesh. The guardian said, "Blood carries memory. Memory binds flame." Aiden Vale kept his voice even while his pulse battered. Aiden said, "Tell me the cost, not the poetry." The guardian's eyes were old water over deep stone. Guardian said, "Wake the dragon and give it a name that is not your own, or it will take yours and burn your marrow." Elara Wynn's breath caught, yet she did not step back. Elara said, "There is a name that spares him." Master Rowan bowed, as if to a cathedral older than earth. Rowan said, "Speak the true making if you know it." Finn Ashby swallowed and found daring in fear. Finn said, "If he forgets himself, we remember him loud." The chamber's walls stirred with faint outlines of wings. Guardian said, "The truth is sharp. It cuts bonds and hands alike." Aiden said, "Then let truth cut clean." The chamber brightened like a blade drawn from oil. Horns thundered above, and the vault shook as a crack tore through the ceiling. Draven Blackthorn's voice poured down like ash turned to sound. Draven said, "Kneel, and the fire will learn your names kindly." Aiden Vale looked up into falling dust. Jaw set. Aiden said, "Kindness from a blade is still a cut." Elara Wynn drew close, a fierce quiet burning through doubt. Elara said, "I was sworn to another house, but I choose this path." Finn Ashby squared himself as if daring his knees to tremble. Finn said, "If we kneel, it will be to fix boots." Master Rowan lifted his staff and breathed a word that bent the crack aside. Rowan said, "You lost your pupil when you betrayed your oath." Draven laughed, sharp as broken glass. Draven said, "I did not lose him. I sharpened him into an enemy." Stones rained like hard rain that could not wet. Aiden said, "Then meet the forge that remakes me." The vault steadied, and the dragon's breath whispered like distant surf. They reached the heart chamber where chains met a single black scale larger than a door. Aiden Vale said, "If blood binds, then let it bind in mercy." Master Rowan placed his palm to the scale and winced as it remembered him. Rowan said, "I was the hand that locked you. Let me be the voice that frees." Elara Wynn pressed her dagger to her palm and fed a single drop to the seam. Elara said, "Take only what love can spare." Finn Ashby set his hand over Aiden's to steady the shake no pride could hide. Finn said, "If you forget your name, I will shout it until mountains learn it." The Guardian's voice braided with the chamber. Guardian said, "Name the dragon, and refuse yourself." Aiden breathed once and chose the word that tasted like home. Aiden said, "Oreth." The chains unhooked themselves with sounds like rain on bronze, and heat rolled out gentle as a first summer wind. The world pivoted toward a future it did not yet understand. The ground quaked as the kingdom above reeled, towers toppling and fires staining the horizon. Finn Ashby said, "The world sounds like it is breaking its teeth." Elara Wynn pulled Aiden Vale forward, her eyes sharp with resolve. Elara said, "The dragon stirs, but so does Draven's wrath." Master Rowan braced against the wall, staff trembling with the echo of spells. Rowan said, "The crown bleeds flame into every stone." Aiden Vale pressed the locket to his chest, feeling heat sear through leather. Aiden said, "The city burns unless Orath wakes." The Guardian's whisper swam through air like water over steel. Guardian said, "Wake it not for victory, but for balance." The cavern ceiling cracked, spilling embers like dying stars. Finn muttered, "Balance feels a lot like being crushed." Elara steadied him with a grim smile. Elara said, "We fight to keep one stone standing, and that will be enough." Outside, the horns of Draven split the night into fear. In the vault, Master Rowan raised both hands, runes sparking from his palms. Rowan said to wake Orath, "I must give what was stolen." Aiden Vale grabbed his arm, voice breaking. Aiden said, "Not at the cost of you." Rowan's eyes burned with sorrow and steel. Rowan said, "My failure forged Draven, my end forges you." Elara Wynn tried to step between them, shaking her head. Elara said, "There must be another way." Finn Ashby's voice cracked but stood firm. Finn said, "Heroes never get to choose the easy way." Rowan pressed the staff into Aiden's hands, the wood splintering with heat. Rowan said, "Carry this flame when I am ash." Aiden's tears blurred as Rowan's body dissolved into radiant light, feeding the runes until the chamber blazed like dawn. Elara whispered, "He gave more than wisdom, he gave hope." Aiden knelt, shaking, as the chamber roared alive. The chamber split, revealing a cavern heart where a colossal eye stirred beneath obsidian glass. Aiden Vale whispered, "Orath." The dragon's breath fogged the air with molten heat. Elara Wynn shielded her face, her cloak whipping in the storm of rising power. Elara said, "Its gaze is older than crowns." Finn Ashby stumbled, gripping stone for dear life. Finn said, "Its eye is bigger than my whole village." The Guardian's voice rippled, deep as earth. Guardian said, "It waits for a name, not a master." Aiden lifted the staff, voice breaking through fear. Aiden said, "Orath, rise with mercy, not with chains." The obsidian cracked, light bursting through like rivers of fire. The dragon's shape unfolded, scales molten black and silver, wings unfurling wider than the chamber. Elara whispered, "Hope wears fire tonight." The earth shivered as the dragon exhaled, waking into legend once more. Above, the battle erupted as Draven Blackthorn led his knights through firelit streets. Draven said, "Bring the city to its knees, and the dragon to my chains." His armor burned with runes forged from betrayal. Aiden Vale mounted Orath scaled back, clutching the staff with both hands. Aiden said, "Then face flame with flame." Elara Wynn climbed behind him, her blade drawn though dwarfed by dragonfire. Elara said, "If we fall together." Finn Ashby clung desperately, shouting, "Someone remind me how this counts as courage." Orath roared, shaking towers to rubble, wings slicing through storm clouds. The Guardian's voice thundered in unison. Guardian said, "The balance awakens." Draven raised his sword, glowing with false fire, and snarled. Draven said, "I will chain hope itself." The dragon and the betrayer collided in a storm of fire and steel above the burning kingdom. The clash burned sky and stone, fire against steel, vow against betrayal. Draven Blackthorn's blade struck like lightning, but Orath's roar drowned thunder itself. Aiden Vale shouted, "This ends with truth, not with chains." Elara Wynn lunged, slashing at Draven's armor, sparks raining like meteors. Elara said, "Your rule dies tonight." Finn Ashby hurled a broken spear, desperate, and it struck true in Draven's shoulder. Finn said, "That's for every soul you broke." Draven staggered, roaring, his runes flickering. Draven said, "I am the crown." The Guardian's voice shook heaven and earth. Guardian said, "You are the shadow, and shadows fade." Aiden drove the staff into the fire roaring from Orith's chest, unleashing a torrent that swallowed Draven whole. His scream cut into silence, his figure dissolving into ash. The storm stilled, the fires dimmed, and Orith's wings folded over the city like a shield. The storm bled away from the city, leaving smoke like bruises against the dawn. Aiden Vale stood on Orith's neck and listened to the hush. Aiden said, "The fire is done, but the ashes still speak." Elara Wynn lowered her blade and watched the streets breathe again. Elara said, "They will want names for the fallen, and names for hope." Finn Ashby sat hard on the parapet, shaking with relief. Finn said, "I am keeping this terror as a memory of courage." Orath folded wings over the square like a sheltering roof. The Guardian watched from a spire, silent as stone. Guardian said, "Balance keeps its promises when the living keep theirs." Bells rang, not for doom, but for counting hearts that still beat. They walked through broken gates, where children peered from doorways. Aiden Vale said, "We rebuild before we celebrate." Elara Wynn gathered a fallen banner and tied it to a splintered lance. Elara said, "Let mercy be the first law we raise." Finn Ashby handed water to a guard who had dropped his spear. Finn said, "Drink, and then help me lift these stones." The Guardian's gaze drifted over the wounded and the wary. Guardian said, "A kingdom breathes by how it treats its smallest breath." Aiden nodded, more burdened by kindness than by steel. Aiden said, "We will count debts in gardens, not prisons." The square stirred as if a seed had found its light. At the palace steps, counselors argued over crowns and blame. Aiden Vale stood below the dais and did not climb. Aiden said, "The throne is not a cure, the work is." Elara Wynn faced the hall where fear still hid behind velvet. Elara said, "Speak truth and share bread, or history repeats its fire." Finn Ashby cleared his throat and surprised himself. Finn said, "If you love the kingdom, lift a stone today." The Guardian's voice moved like wind across banners. Guardian said, "Choose service and the dragon will keep the sky." A hush answered, heavy and clean. Aiden lifted Rowan's staff and bowed his head. Aiden said, "Let his wisdom rule where our pride once did." The hall breathed out and listened. At dusk, they carried a simple bier to the river bend where willows kept old vows. Aiden Vale said, "Master Rowan will travel where our thanks cannot." Elara Wynn set the staff across the bier and drew a breath that shook. Elara said, "He taught us to fail forward and stand again." Finn Ashby held a lantern and blinked hard at the water. Finn said, "Goodbyes sound like bells under the skin." Orath bowed his head until scales met shadow. The Guardian traced a circle that glowed and faded. Guardian said, "The faithful are not gone, they are carried." The river lifted the bier and moved like a slow heart toward night. Night settled clear and full of listening stars. Aiden Vale stood on the highest tower with Elara Wynn and Finn Ashby at his side. Aiden said, "The dragon will not rule us, it will keep us honest." Elara smiled, fierce and bright. Elara said, "Then let tomorrow be worthy of today." Finn laughed, soft and amazed at survival. Finn said, "If anyone asks, we were brave on purpose." Orath rose, wings taking the moonlight like armor. The Guardian watched the horizon as if reading the next page. Guardian said, "Hope is not an ending, it is a gate." The dragon climbed the sky, and the city looked up without fear.